So for those of you who don't know, if you're not familiar with Alliance of Channel Women, or if you're not a member yet, we are a national nonprofit organization that's really here to help women network, but really more than that, we're here to empower and advance women's careers and technology. We have mentorship programs, job opportunities. There's a ton of way to volunteer, tons of ways to volunteer with ACW. So if you are interested or want to learn more, we've got a flyer with QR codes. Scan that. Ask me or Mel if you want to learn more about that. We're happy to tell you more. And yeah, you should join ACW. It's $100 a year, and a lot of companies expense it. So you should ask if you're not already a member. All right, well, let's get into tonight's topic. I'm going to pass things to Valerie Lockhart, who is the founder of Minnesota Women in Tech. Yeah, woo! All right. So this is our second event that ACW Minnesota has hosted with Minnesota Women in Tech. It's been a really great partnership. It's allowed us to really expand our reach and really reach a lot more women in our network and bring more folks into the tribe, which is what we're all about. So Val, I'm going to pass things to you and let's get started.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, like Stacy said, I'm Val Lockhart. I run the Minnesota Women in Tech and an organization called Code Savvy. So my whole life is surrounded around teaching people about technology, particularly people who are not normally in tech. So those are kind of the mission of both of the organizations I work with. And myself, I have a background. I was in HR and legal compliance for many decades for a building products distributor. So I am familiar with male-dominated industries. And I have my own male ally, tech mentor, who I've worked with for the last 20 years. And so this topic is near and dear to my heart, and I'm so glad that you are all here to talk about this. Some of the things that we talk about might get a little uncomfortable, and that's what you can't fix what you don't talk about. So that's why we're here. It's why these nice folks are here to talk about their experiences, and I hope it's a good conversation. While we're talking, if you all have things you want to contribute to this conversation, we're super open to that. We don't want to just be a one-way discussion. We'd like your input as well. So please feel free to chime in, ask questions. If you have stories that you want to share as we talk through some of these things, let us know. Okay? All right. So I'm going to let each of you introduce yourselves and share a brief story about how your ally has impacted your career positively. We'll start with Mel.
Going this way. All right. Well, hi. I'm Mel Kolinski, Director of Channel Development for Ostra Cybersecurity. I'm also the co-moderator of this chapter, so I'm super excited to see all of you here. I've been in this role for about 1.5 years now, and it is my first role in cybersecurity and the channel. So we'll talk a lot about a lot of things, but ACW has been super pivotal in everything for me anyway, in terms of growing my network and meeting other amazing, strong women. Sorry, I'm not eating the microphone enough. I'm getting this weird hand signal from the guy in the back that I wasn't quite sure what it meant until I paid attention. Anyway, so I've met some awesome women along the way. One of them is sitting over here with a big old smile on her face. And just, it's so nice to be in an environment where you can ask those questions that feel maybe a little dumb or, like I should know that already. But I still have that support and I can ask those questions in a safe way with my ACW ladies. So appreciate you guys coming out, and I think I've way talked past what I was supposed to, and I didn't answer all the questions, but that's pretty typical of me. So
that's good. That's good. We'll hand it over to Paul. And if you could give, with your current role and what you're doing, why you wanted to be a part of today's panel.
Sure. So my name's Paul Dobbins, Chief Growth Officer at Ostra Cybersecurity. I've been with the company for about 3.5 years. And one reason that I brought Mel to Ostra and recruited her over was, I think we worked together many years ago at Fortegra, which bought a company that we worked for, ProtectCell, and we stayed in touch And whenever Mel had some situations that she wanted to run past me from a sales perspective, she would call me, and we had a great time just catching up and going over just all kinds of different situations. And I thought that coming into cybersecurity was new to me as well. And what we do at Ostra required some new thinking. And I think that it needed some new perspective. And what Mel didn't tell you is she came from an industry that is also male-dominated prior to this, the plumbing industry. And I thought that if she can kick ass in the plumbing industry, there's no doubt that she can sell and kick ass in cybersecurity. And I've seen firsthand what ACW has done for her, and also for many other women. Some of the things that Mel mentioned when it comes to asking about pay, asking about like the things that we don't normally talk about. You know, I've heard some of those conversations, and it's important that you guys have that network that isn't always there, especially in a male-dominated field. But really, the true reason that I'm mostly involved is probably my late mother, because she was always such an advocate for women, and she was a very strong woman. She would march up and down the halls of the legislature in Missouri, fighting for reading recovery, and not taking no for an answer. And I kind of took that as as inspiration to you know, be more involved for you know, after seeing what she kind of went through, and some of the things in education that were wrong, quite honestly. And also, I got the chance to work around a lot of other very strong, powerful women. The governor from Missouri died in 2000 when he was running for Senate, and I worked for his widow, who went on to be senator from the state of Missouri. And you talk about being in a male-dominated place, especially in that situation where your husband just died, and now you're thrust into the United States Senate. It was amazing to see what she was able to do. And so I've just had a lot of really good experiences with very strong, powerful women. And so I guess that's why I'm involved.
Perfect. Thank you.
Want to point out one thing. Paul did not reveal how long ago we worked together, and for that, I really appreciate you.
We're gonna pass it over to PK. Introduce yourself and what you're doing right now, and why you brought your ally here today.
So I'm Priscilla Koeckeritz. For those of you who know me, I go by PK. It's actually not for Priscilla Koeckeritz. My middle name is Kara. It's a long story, but I answer to it regardless. Makes me a little bit more approachable in the construction industry, for sure, where I am working with a lot of guys who are building stuff, producing stuff, working on the manufacturing floor. And working with those people and finding rapport with them is really, really important to helping women rise in the construction industry. I'm currently president of Brin Glass Company. We are a Upper Midwest manufacturing, installation, and service company. So I brought my ally here, who plucked me out of what was a pretty cozy consulting, teaching, post-3 startups, non-stressful career, to come join Brin and to ultimately be his successor to take over the company. So I'll hand it over.
What do you think about that, Craig?
It's my husband.
I'm Bill Sullivan. I'm CEO of Brin Glass Company. Interesting fact about me is 40 years ago was first job right out of college. And I've worked my way up the ladder. And up until January, I was president and CEO, and that's how I identified myself. I'm a little, and I mentioned this to the group when we talked last week, embarrassed that we have to talk about this like this, because we should be hiring the best qualified candidate for the job, and that's how I asked PK to join us at Brin and be my successor. So took a little arm twisting, because the story was we brought her on as a fractional chief marketing officer with the company she was working with. And she was embedded with our leadership team, attended our weekly meetings, our quarterly planning sessions, and I knew right away she had more horsepower in the tank to give. And in September of 2022, we were at the Hewing Hotel, and I asked her to join our team as Chief Operating Officer. I thought I shared all of her strengths that she had, and she was concerned about having industry experience. And I said, that's actually a benefit that you don't, because you're not going to get in the weeds. And I said, you're going to make a great number two, and it would be great for the transition to my successor. And then I threw out the little carrot, or if you choose, potentially you could replace me. And so I ordered an old fashioned. She ordered bourbon, Angel Envy, neat. And so I knew right there she was going to work out.
That was the kicker. It's super cool that both of our allies here mentioned that not being in industry was actually a key component of the hire. It's a good reminder for all of us that sometimes you have to make a pivot, and the skills that you have in one industry are transferable to others. So don't feel like you have to get stuck in a certain lane. You can change and have great things happen. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the importance of having male allies. So the question is, what impact do you believe male allies can have on changing workplace culture in some of these male-dominated industries? So we'll start with Mel again, as a woman in tech. What do you believe? What impact do you think men have?
It's like I get to be first for all of it.
Yeah.
It's good and bad. I honestly, as Bill said, as hard as it is to say, I think our voices get lost because we're not the majority. And I think especially not being of the industry that you're in, there is sometimes a lack of confidence. Me, I experienced that. I had a little lack of confidence at first, which those who know me well is shocking information. But it's also not feeling heard. And you need that male voice to help get your message out, because that's how we've been conditioned. Until we can change that, it's important to have them on our side. Yeah.
PK will give you the same question. What impact?
So I have either the blessing or the curse of having been in male-dominated industries most of my career. I started in medical sales, so the only female on a 20-person male team that traveled. Got into banking, lots of women in banking at that point in time. When I came back to Minnesota, I worked at Medtronic, MedTech, lots of men in MedTech. And then started my own, did my first startup, ended up with 3 different startups, often selling into male-dominated industries. And so it was just always kind of part of who I was. So I learned very early and often how to position my commentary and how to try to be part of the conversation without trying to drive the conversation. I think the biggest challenge was always being able to have your voice be heard and loud enough without being called the word that no woman likes to be called, right? And so it was always trying to find that space where I could ask the right question to get a conversation started with me. And ultimately, we talk about skills translating. That ultimately is how I ended up translating industries as I found men who recognized that I could ask a good question, I could start a good conversation, and that's how I found my allies. I was really blessed. In every opportunity I've had really strong male counterparts. I've also had experiences where it hasn't worked out so well on the other side of it, and where I was told I was too emotional or taking on too much or all of those things that every guy in the room could do, but when I did it, it was a different lens. And so just working on identifying who was worth my time, who was worth me investing in from a relationship perspective. Been very, very blessed to have a husband who we've been work partners, never worked together, but we, yes. He offered one time, he's like, we should do something together. And I said, no, we should not. But so, having a strong, male partner who understands my value, seeking other people who are really worth the conversation. And the more I did that and I got fed back into, made it easier for me to translate into a company like Brin and to have honest, transparent, professional conversations with Bill where we can get passionate, we can get emotional, we can like dig our heels in sometimes and have those discussions, and we're doing it on level ground. But it takes a lot of work to do that, but I've been very honored as I've come into Brin, not just with Bill, but some of the other male leaders at Brin, of how open they've been, not just to me, but to expanding the conversation with women.
Awesome. We're gonna move things on to Paul for a minute. Why do you think it's important for men to actively participate in discussions and initiatives that are aimed at gender equality in the workplace?
Well, as you all talk about this, there's a story I was going to tell for a later question, but I'll go ahead and tell it now because the voice is important. And so when you see someone who's working on an account for 6 months saying the same thing for 6 months, multiple times, and then you see a male counterpart who's at a higher level say the same thing one time and it gets praised, you have to call bullshit. And seeing that firsthand is why you have to do something. And you have to make sure that you have the right leadership in place that you can say something, or else you need to go somewhere else. I think getting involved is important, and I think that even something as small as, making sure that you're asking the right questions, like why are we saying it's okay now, and why is this different? And just challenging the way that we're thinking about things is important. And it's uncomfortable, but it's important. And I've been really lucky to have the right leadership in the right places. And where I didn't have the right leadership, I've quit with nothing lined up.
Sometimes you have to do that.
I think.
Yeah, perfect. Bill, just you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, being the CEO, the top of the food chain, so to speak, it's important for me to model that it's okay to normalize having female in leadership positions, and so that when we bring in somebody like PK, that it's, we have work to do to get it all the way through the organization, but everybody understands her role and has accepted her because it's part of our culture. We're accepting. We have the saying that, put the right people in the right seat. And that's what I did with PK. You always want to hire somebody brighter and smarter than you are. And I'm okay saying that. And so.
No, that's awesome. All right, so I am going to turn this question over to Paul and Mel to answer kind of combo style. How can other organizations encourage men to understand the importance of their role in supporting women in your industries? So are there tips or tricks that you would give to other orgs to do better?
Like, look, I still defer to you. Did you notice that?
I think one challenge, we talk about this a lot. I think part of the hardest thing is understanding that that you're not going to be perfect, right? So I've done a lot of stuff that's way off base, right? For instance, you know, I'm probably just screwing up the last question, but no. You know, like society, like has kind of shoved in our face, like women need saving, right? So like for the first half of my life, like I just tried to fix everything. Well, lo and behold, the two Stacys in my life, my wife is Stacy and my marketing director is Stacy, so it's very confusing at times. But both Stacys in my life have corrected me many times. We don't need you to fix this. We don't need you to save us. And I think other organizations and other men in general need to realize, like, you don't have to be perfect, because I think we don't talk about any of this. And I think people are just afraid to do something wrong or say something wrong, or just say it. It might be wrong, but if your heart's in the right place, it's fine. Like we'll get through it, right? I think that's the most difficult thing. So Stacy's taught me a ton. Mel's taught me a ton. They've put me in my spot plenty of times, and I think we just need to be more receptive to constructive feedback. And I think that goes for anything.
Yeah, I mean, you covered most of that.
No, nothing to add from your perspective on what organizations could do better?
Well, I think making it okay to have the discussion. I might get this backwards, Val. Sorry, but so we were talking a little bit earlier, and somebody said, "Well, the word ally could be a trigger to some people," and I kind of like let that sink in, because that is not a wrong statement. But like, why the fuck would that be a trigger for somebody? Well, because then you have to acknowledge that something's broken or something's wrong, and we need help fixing it. And so I think the message to other organizations is it's okay to acknowledge that something's broken as long as you're willing to do the work to fix it. So, yeah, I think ally is a word that triggers people, and I think that that's part of the work we have to do, is to help fix that feeling and make it okay to be a little bit broken.
Agreed. So for PK and Paul, it's the same question, but a little bit of context.
I'm Bill.
Oh, sorry. What did I say?
Paul.
I'm sorry. I'm PK. It was like PK and Paul. It sounds like it should go together, right? PK and Bill. So same question, but as a 100-year-old company in a field that's traditionally very male, how have you seen things shifting at Brin?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we are construction and manufacturing based. There's not a lot of females in the trades, in carpentry, electricians. I think there's 5 out of probably 350 field workers that are female in our industry, which is terrible. 0. Yeah. Prior to 2020, to the best of my knowledge, we've only had 1 woman in a leadership role. Since 2020, we've had up to 4 out of 8, and currently 3 out of 8 women in leadership roles, but that's at the top level. We have women throughout our middle managers. And again, it goes back to building that culture of acceptance, leading by example. And I think also that we're very intentional about our communication and transparency. We hired a great chief marketing officer that taught us how to do that, you know. We're 112 years old, and we had never hired a marketing company until 2021. And they came on board. Stacy worked with us, and it's like, I know we can swear, thanks, Mel. They said, holy shit. They probably said something else too, but we got a lot of work to do here, so.
I think that one of the pieces that we need to remember as we as women are entering male-dominated industries is that men have fundamental needs from a communication and a relationship perspective that are often very different from ours. And so if we walk into an environment and I just expect that every guy in that world is now going to respect me, like me, follow me, that's my mistake, right? That's my error. And so, you know, walking into Brin, you know, one of the pieces that I work really, really hard on is, you know, getting out with our glazers and walking the production floor and not acting like I know what the piece of equipment does that they're working on, but have a conversation and I'll ask them, right? These are craftsmen. These are people who have studied and they've practiced this. So being able to ask them, the guys, tell me about this piece of equipment. Tell me what you're doing. Help me learn. Right? There's a certain amount of respect, and I can see when I have those conversations and I ask those questions and I show that curiosity to say, hey, you know a lot of stuff that I don't know. Guess what? I get in return. They then respect that I know a lot of stuff that they don't know. And we get into more of a symbiotic relationship. And I think that is, you know, we need men in our environments to invite women in. Right, so we need great allies and people who can have the foresight to look forward and see that we need more women. We need the opinions at the table. And then I was coached on this, right? My last startup was an energy technology concept, and I sold into mechanical contractors. I didn't know what a rooftop unit was, right? So I could either act like I knew it all, or I could act like I knew nothing. And guess what I got in return? I got an education and a half. And then as they learned what my skill sets were, guess what they did? They invited me into their circle. So I think that there's a really honest conversation that we as women have to have with ourselves. We don't have to go in and prove anything to the people there, especially the guys there who know more, have a different education or more experience. What we need to do is learn what they're doing so that they will return that curiosity. And not all of them will. Right? We can't make them, but there's a great opportunity for us, you know, a handful of allies and a little bit of curiosity, and we can take any role, we can get into any position that we want.
100%. All right, so this part of the conversation is where we get into the kind of more uncomfortable topics. So
Give this one to Paul.
we will, actually. So there are many undiscussed risks that men face when mentoring women. Some of these risks include a misinterpretation of intentions, false accusations, concerns from their spouses, female pattern aggression. Do we need to talk about that? Lack of support from their own peers or management, and an uncertainty on being able to provide meaningful and effective support. So there's a bunch of risks in this partnering and allyship. So let's discuss how valid are those concerns? Paul, do you have any stories to share? I know you've talked about some examples, but.
Yeah, so I shared a couple of those stories. Another one came to mind from previous employer that let's just say that you know, they started caring about women when they were starting to go public, right? And it's kind of like when you know, when you get told, you know, just all the inappropriate jokes and They're saying one thing out of this side of the mouth, and then behind closed doors, they're telling you, no, you can't hire her. She's not good looking enough. Like literally verbatim from the, executive management. When I when I started realizing that, just a small example, when I started realizing that I had account managers that we'd have clients in, and every single time the same person was asked to do all of the food, all of the cleanup, all of the ordering. The same people were still doing all of the administrative tasks, from completing executive expense reports, and I made the decision that I had conversations with these women and said, hey, why don't you, the next time that we have these, just tell so-and-so that they can come to me, and I'll take care of it this next time. And so the next time a client came in, I took care of all of it and did all of the food ordering, did all of the cleanup, did all of that stuff, and made sure that job was then dispersed amongst everyone equally the next several times. And then I had to have a conversation with like our executive vice president about why he still had the same person doing expense reports for him, that I wasn't sure how that was going to go over. And there's been a couple of times where I wasn't sure that I was going to be around much longer after some of the conversations I had. So there's definitely some risks involved, just because of politics. And when you hear the conversations that go on in some of these organizations, and then you kind of challenge what they're doing, it can definitely upset the apple cart.
An additional kind of question on this, because I hear what you're saying. What I'm wondering is, there's people in the news we've been hearing about, there's executive men that will not have meetings with women by themselves. They won't do business with women because of the risks associated with it. So are there any, it doesn't have to be a story, but are there any things in your minds that men can do to protect themselves from those risks while still engaging in a mentorship or an allyship role? Or is that something that you've had to navigate at all?
I think the areas that I've encountered more are less on the meeting end, and more on the after-hours social side. And I've seen that. I've seen some situations that, that I would not want to put myself in, for sure. And I think with alcohol involved, you have to be extremely careful, just for everyone's safety. Because for me, I think everyone, a lot of people know that I don't get hangovers, so I don't know what your tolerance is. I don't know what anyone's tolerance is, and you don't know what that experience is for anyone else. So, yeah, I think there is some caution that needs to be had. My own personal experience has been that I have not experienced anything from a meeting perspective per se. But I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I was just going to share that for me, I wouldn't want to have different meeting requirements for a male versus a female. It should be, everybody should be treated equally. And I always joke, one of my strengths is being naive, and that's led to a lot of my success because I wasn't afraid, when I was in sales, I wasn't afraid to go make a cold call. They told me to do it, okay. Go make a cold call, right? And same thing with promoting women in leadership positions. It's natural. You hire the right person for the right seat and the best person. Another thing I want to share is I have a wife and I have a daughter that's in a leadership role, and I would not be able to go home if I treated women differently. So.
Mel or PK, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I do some mentoring, and I think what's important, and to Bill's point, it's that equal treatment, right? Doing things, and often, regardless of whether I'm meeting with men or women, initial meetings are typically in a public place. If somebody's looking for my advice, I'll ask them to, hey, send me an email. Summarize what outcomes you want from my mentorship, right? What are we going to get out of this time together? And part of that, and not to create a document trail, but create a document trail. When you have somebody who's asked for your time, and then if things go a little south, it's easy to end and say, hey, this is what you asked for. That's not what we're doing. We can close that out. I think it's, to Paul's point, it's really important to separate your work situations and your social situations and understand, where those relationships are happening. And just, yes, women, we should protect ourselves. I mean, my first mentor, I thought that he was, all for what was in my best interests until he invited me to Tahiti when I was 23 years old. So, that again, I was like, oh, okay, that's where we are, right? So, I've been on that side of it, and I think as I have, grown and developed from a management perspective, I've managed men, I've managed women, manage large teams. It is understanding, and through errors that I made in judgment over time, right, getting to a point of, let's just have an up and up professional relationship and know the difference between, friendship and workplace, professional relationships.
Yes. I think one other thing that's really important, we talk about this a lot in everything we do, I feel like at work, but trust and transparency. So, I don't think I would seek advice from someone I didn't trust, but also just being really open with the people around you about what's going on so that there's no room for people to spin up their own stories makes a big difference. So I know I have a very protective husband who has never once looked sideways at Paul. Mostly because he's like 6 inches shorter, but no. Sorry, babe. But no, I think that's a big part of it, is just talking about what you're doing so that there's no room for stories.
Right. And unhinged people come in all forms, right? So you just have to protect yourself and know who you're dealing with. Yeah. Okay. That'll bring us to our future direction. What changes would you like to see in how male allies are involved in promoting gender equality within your industries? Mel, you have the mic.
I think we're starting it here today, right? These are the kinds of conversations. We're having this at an event that is run by a female-led organization, and that's great. We have to have more of them in our own organizations. And I think that's a big piece, is having those conversations and being open to the difficult stuff, right? I mean, here's the deal. We hire women into our industry. Guess what? At some point, they might be gone to have babies, right? their schedules might be wacky and different. Again, I was really blessed. My husband and I had a pretty well 50-50, or at least 60-40 split on taking care of the kids, which was really, really good. He was amazing, still is amazing. And I was really blessed by that. But not every woman has that situation at home, or some of them have husbands who are traveling or doing different things. And so understanding, I think from a workplace perspective, there are jobs. I mean, our production jobs, the guys get there at 6 a.m., they're done at 2, right? I can't change the time that the cutting machine is running, right? So if you can't work those hours, you can't work that job. But there are jobs where we can have a little bit more flexibility. We can adapt to things. If any of you guys end up following Kim Dodge, she combines, Kim's our brand development manager at Brin, and she posts often about how her work-life balance and how Brin allows her to do the things that she needs to with her kids, right? That's the kind of organization we want to be, but it starts with having women who are willing to get into the conversation, and then leadership who understands that we need to listen, and we can't always make everything work. It's not our job to make everybody's perfect schedule work, but it is our job to listen and do everything that we can to keep valuable people moving on a development path forward, and making sure that they know what we need from them organizationally, and then asking for everything that they can do. And that goes for men or women.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like universal design, right? Like if you're making something, it'll make it better for everybody.
That's right.
Not just one.
I'll just share our National Glass Association. Every industry has a national association of something, and they really do a good job of promoting women in our industry. And I know PK's been involved in some of their networking opportunities, and just talking about this and advancing these issues is huge. We're not going to grow if we hide it under a rug.
I think it's also really important, while it's very important for our mental health and our work-life balance, for our own companies to be in that place, and what Val is asking about. But I think also from an industry perspective, especially both of us, right? Like, I go to an event, I might be one of 5 women in the room, and 3 of them work for the company throwing the event, right? And often uncomfortable, inappropriate shit gets said. And it's always nice to know that this guy has my back. And it's never, to his point, he said he learned this, but it's never, I'm going to come save you. We had something happen within the last 12 months where we were at an event together, and somebody said something wildly inappropriate to me in front of 15 other men. And I looked at Paul and I said, holy shit, did he say that out loud? And Paul goes, yeah, what are we going to do about it? And I loved, in that moment, I just, it felt so okay, because I knew he wasn't going to swoop in and fix it or embarrass me further by making it worse, or, turning this table of men against, you just don't know. You don't know who you're with at these things. And so it was just, I think that's a piece of it too. It's so much harder, I think, to speak out in public than in the safety of your own 4 walls of your company. So I think it's an industry change as well.
The sad part was she brought that story up at an ACW national event, and afterwards I had to say, which one was that? No, I think, speaking of those events, I think one thing that could be done a little bit better, and I think you guys are doing a great job of it right here, is making men feel more comfortable attending some of these, because not that it's I don't have a problem with it, because I like I said, I have a history of working with very strong women my entire life, right? And but I think we saw in Vegas, right? We were with some of our great friends, and we were pretty open and honest about, hey, come in and come sit at our table, and they still just did not want to come in there. They were very intimidated. So it can be a little intimidating, right? So I don't know what the answer is. No, right. They do start with that, right? Yeah. No. No, but that is something I think that will help, and I think this is a great way to do it. So
Thank you. I want to make sure that if anybody has questions, you can ask our panel here for their insights. Anybody?
some hands back there earlier.
Yeah.
I think kind of along in the same vein of what we're talking about now, and Priscilla, what you talked about earlier about just making your counterparts feel comfortable. Have you received that back? So you've been the expert in the industry, and a new man has come in and shown you the respect that you have given to all of these other people, and then in just helping men feel comfortable coming to events like this. I think it's a little bit hard to hear in the sense of like, it's my job to make sure that you feel comfortable.
Yeah,
We
no,
feel I don't
I get
feel
it.
comfortable in other spaces. Like, what does that look like? And you seem like a great guy. I'm not trying to diss you.
No, hey, I'm the white male up here telling you to make me feel comfortable. I get it.
So like, what does that look like? Like, I feel like it's a lot of, like, I want to make sure I'm approachable so that you can take me seriously and promote me later versus
Yep.
taking me seriously just as a person.
I think around the world, respect is important, right? Like we all need to have that. So, but I'm not on the panel, so you all.
Well, I'll give you a couple ideas of what I've done, okay? Maybe this works for you, maybe it doesn't. But I think this concept of ally is really an important one. You talk about being, one of a handful of women. I went to an event of 400 engineers, and I was the woman in the room. And I knew going into a lot of events that I've been, I often was. And so it was really important to me ahead of time to find out a few people that I knew or knew me who were going to be at that event. And I would reach out to them ahead of time and say, hey, I'm coming to this event. I'm looking for some help getting some introductions, because there's no better way for a woman to work a room than to have, Bill, and he did this for our first big National Glass Association event, Glass Build. I must have met 300 people, but introducing me and who I was and what my role was. And so all you need is a couple of advocates who are willing to kind of announce you and kind of give you the credence of why you're there and kind of set that stage. And then you've got another ally. And then you just keep picking off the room until half the room knows who you are, and you can have a conversation with any of them. So I think that's really important for women going into that room. I think for us as women.
Do we do that for men?
We don't.
Yeah, we
No,
don't.
we don't. And so, and Bill's seen me work rooms like our holiday party. I go out of my way to talk to every single person, every glazer, every production person, meet their wives or their girlfriends, bowl with them, have a drink with them, like get into their conversations. Because guess what? My leadership team, they talk to me all the time. My direct reports, they see me all the time. So when I'm in a room like that, I'm looking for the people who are uncomfortable, and I'm seeking them out. So as women, it is our job, and it's not just looking for the men, it's looking for anybody. If we want to be included in the conversation, we want to be able to lead the conversation, it starts by us taking an active approach. And the next time you're in a room that you're uncomfortable, just pick one person in the room and, like Bill said, make a cold call, right? Hey, and what about being transparent and honest? Hey, you know what? I don't know anybody here. Do you know anybody here? This is a little uncomfortable. Why not just say it out loud? I think that the biggest thing we can do to get this conversation going is just to say it out loud.
And I will say, now that you've kind of talked about that, Mel has done that for me, 100%. The first ACW event that she went to, like 3 months into the job, I remember going out afterwards, and we went to we went to a social event that I was invited to, and we walked in, and everyone knew Mel. No one knew who I was, and it was great. I loved it. But no, you've consistently had folks for me to be introduced to at these events, now that I'm thinking about it, and you've done exactly that. So maybe it's not the fact that I'm more comfortable, and you've set me up for that. So I appreciate it.
Well, it's teamwork, right?
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
In the same vein, just because I'm going to go back to it, the making men comfortable thing, super triggering, I think, for most people because, I mean, you even made the joke that you're a white man sitting out there, pretty much as comfortable as it can be. But at the same time, I understand that we're not in a perfect place right now. So how would you say that you try and balance between like just really trying to push away from like putting all the accountability on women to conform to a male-dominated place and moving into a place where it's just respecting people regardless of socially constructed gender roles?
How many years do we have to answer that question?
I was going to say, we're going from one extreme to trying to get to the middle.
Yeah, if you're saying it's fine. I mean, I know this is going to take a long time. We still have to pay that why. But it's still there. I know that. So I mean, if you're in the beginning stages, what are you doing, thinking about that now? Because unfortunately, we don't have. There's not really the luxury of waiting for like, okay, we're gonna solve this, and then we can move on to this. It's just a big clusterfuck, and we have to tackle it.
I feel like we need to pull that quote out for later. It's a big clusterfuck. I like that a lot. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't think I have a super great answer. I feel like I'm that person that always has like the America Ferrara monologue from the Barbie movie in my head. Like, I am constantly not enough for anybody that I am in front of. I'm always trying to be more of this and less of that, and I'm too loud and I'm too quiet, and the struggle to balance and the frustration of having to make you assholes feel comfortable because I have different body parts is ridiculous. Like, we can say, I think that's okay. We can say that, safe space. These guys will still like us when this event is over. But to your point, like, you have to, I don't know. I feel like I'm constantly channeling my like inner femme rage and trying to like put it away, put the smile on, and try not to talk to him like he's, an idiot. Because they're not idiots, the ones that don't get it and the ones that want to talk down. And Claudia, come on. It's a balance every day. And I don't think there's like one silver bullet answer or else we'd be there already. It's just constantly doing the work and having the uncomfortable conversations. And when things go well, shout that shit from the rooftop because that's the example you want to provide. And that's the reason we wanted to have this event because it's so easy to sit back and say, oh, woe is me. I work in a male-dominated industry and it's super hard. Meh. Like, so much better to be able to talk about the positives of it and what we can do together if we work with somebody who supports us and who wants to see us be successful and do it as a team. So I don't have a great answer to that is like, here's the formula we should follow. Maybe somebody else does, but I feel like we just have to put the work in.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you an answer either. I'm just going to comment. I think it's important to be your authentic self, and PK's done a really outstanding job with that, especially in talking to our tradespeople in our production team because their antenna's up for the bullshit factor right away, right? And she has a skill set that puts her on the same level as them, and she can talk intelligently about some things and not others, but she asks questions. And I don't know, do you have any feedback on that?
Well, I think, Kaya,
You can answer the question.
I can. It's not all on women, right? But as women, when we get to a position where we have influence, we have a lot of influence, right? So when I bring groups of people together, especially, at our fab shop, we do monthly all lead meetings and there's 2 women in the room and 13 or 14 guys, right? It's making sure that I put those women in a position to share their ideas, to help facilitate their groups, to partner with guys, to brainstorm and come up with ideas so they practice, right? I'm raising 3 boys. Well, I've raised 3 boys. They're 26, 24, and 19. We're still trying to get them off.
Craig's here, too.
Yeah, I know. We're still trying to get them off the payroll. But I hope that as an example to them and what I've said, that the next generation is going to come into this conversation differently, and they're going to have a different perspective, and that the way they look at their female counterparts is different, the conversations they're having. So is it going to take a lot of time? Yes. And does it have to be intentional on my part, right? I've got a company of 200 people, right? 80% of them are male. I have a really huge responsibility in this change cycle to look at how we facilitate those conversations. And I take that responsibility with all seriousness. And that becomes even more important for me to have allies and support structure because it's a lot of work. And it will be for a period of time. And when we bring our allies to the table, you know, my next tier of leaders, I can influence some of those men who are going to be leaders of the future to have that same active approach to let's have everybody have the conversation. Let's have everybody participate. Let's make sure that all the voices are heard and that we're getting all the best ideas. I tell all my teams, the best ideas at the table, and it's probably not mine. So let's get them out. Let's go, right? And I expect everybody's participation. So some of it's an expectation. And then it is. I would encourage all of you here, if you're a female leader and you can wield that kind of influence, wield it. If you're a male leader and you got women on your team, ask them to wield that influence in your organization. Make sure they know that you've got their back when they start to do things differently to try to encourage and inspire those kinds of connections. Because, I mean, yes, it'll take time to change, but we have to start.
Well, and even if they don't have women in leadership, they need to do it themselves as well. Like they need to start having these uncomfortable conversations and pushing that for their companies.
I'm just going to share an example. PK came up with this idea to have an off-site leadership meeting, and she wanted to invite 65 people, including our installers and our production people. And it was going to be a 2-day event, and it's going to be at a resort. And, you know, we talked through that. I had a hard time wrapping my arms around that. But ultimately, you know, I wanted to give her the space to try that out. And it was the best thing that we've done. Again, demonstrating but through that example and being open and honest with everybody in that room. Hey, I said, hey, this is PK's idea. This has been great. And all the tradespeople thought it was really, really cool to be a part of. And it's not going to be our last one, I can tell you that.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, panelists, for your... Oh. Final thoughts.
Yeah, sorry. The thing about the men being involved and the folks that weren't that left early in Vegas. You know, I know for a fact one, you know, Frank is an example. Great ally, right? Some of the things that I've learned, some of the most important things that I've learned from the women I've worked with are the examples that they've shared about things that have happened to them in the workplace. And at a lot of these events, those things get shared. And it brings a new light to things. And the reason why I want men to feel like they can attend these events is because they can experience and hear more about those examples so that they can actually feel more of that impact of what's actually happening out there. These two have shared things that have really, really impacted the way that I look at things in the workplace. As a husband of a counselor, I apologize if that was triggering, because I know that that's, I feel bad for that. I apologize. But I think that one thing that I've taken the most out is hearing some of those specific examples, because honestly, I didn't realize some of this stuff was still happening. When I told my wife that I was coming here and doing this, she was like, seriously, we have to still be doing this. And she knows that that's still a thing, but we shouldn't have to. But hearing some of the actual examples that are still happening and that have happened in the past and that have affected us and that have caused us to be triggered is one of the reasons why I want to make sure that a lot of these allies and potential allies are coming to these things. So.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Val, for being part of this with us today. You guys, I'm fairly certain we still have a lot of food to eat. Eat, drink, be merry, have fun. Real quick, I do want to say he's going to probably kill me later, but Stacy and I wouldn't be here doing this if it weren't for our founder, Mike Kennedy. So
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for thank you.
He just said you're number one.
Hey, thanks.